Lord Hague, thank you ever so much for taking the time. It's really interesting to hear your views. I'd like to discuss with you a matter that I believe is close to your heart, which is atrocity and genocide prevention. Having worked at the Foreign Office, one of my ongoing frustrations was the idea that the moment we saw early indications of human rights atrocities or abuses, we were too often too slow to act, not for lack of willingness, but because each team was essentially left to act on its own to suddenly become an expert in atrocity prevention, rather than drawing on some international or central resource. And I'm wondering, I think the average member of the public, and even me as someone who works in Foreign Office, would be someone who feels that as individual nation, as international community, we could still do better. So my first question is, what do you feel the UK, and then also as part of the international community, can be doing better to prevent, because that is what we all say we believe in, preventing and engaging more at an earlier time?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking me about this. As you might recall, in 2012, I launched the Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative with Angelina Jolie. And I felt we got a lot of international support for that. And we created an international protocol about evidence collection, where crimes of sexual violence and conflict have been committed to help and guide people around the world. But of course, that was only a beginning. And what is really needed is a central point in the world to help orchestrate that, to bring that together in a world where international institutions were working very well. Well, then we would have that the United Nations Security Council would be empowering a major figure in the United Nations to take action and to investigate wherever such crimes are committed. Now, I can't see the UN Security Council agreeing on such a thing, but it might be possible to create an international commission. It's another of these instances of bringing willing countries together. Rather like the International Commission on Missing Persons, which has done outstanding work after the wars in the Balkans, to ensure that the evidence for prosecutions of war crimes, particularly in the crimes I'm particularly focused on, of crimes of sexual violence in conflict, that evidence can be gathered and preserved and justice ultimately done. I also think we should devote more of our development efforts in this regard. It wouldn't be unrealistic to say 1% of the DFID budget should be ring-fenced for work on gender-based violence around the world, because it is a major development issue. And I think it's important that such a campaign is led from the top. I know senior ministers have their plates rather full, and it's very easy for me, having given up all those responsibilities, to say other people should do things. But these things work internationally when senior members of the government are strongly personally committed to them, because it then produces a reaction from other governments to work with them. So I think there are quite a lot of ideas like that the UK could pursue to encourage faster international action, focus on it in our own government, devote more of our development budget resources, and create international bodies which gather the necessary evidence at the right time.
Thank you. I think, just a follow-up question, Chair, I think one of the challenges around any such organisation, even if it had the backing, is the ability of that organisation to go into countries and get that evidence. Because obviously, for example, in certain countries, it's very unlikely that autocratic regimes would allow them. And that sort of leads me to my separate point, which is multilateral organisations. We're a member of a vast number. Are there those that during your tenure as Foreign Secretary you particularly felt needed reform? And what sort of reforms would you have wanted to have seen?
Well, you're right. It is a major problem, gaining access to the right areas, although not always a problem. In the case of very serious violence against the Rohingya people in recent years, they have been driven into another country where it has been possible to gain access to them, in Bangladesh. Or in the many years of war in Sudan, it was possible to go into Darfur and carry out investigations where the writ of the central government didn't really run. So yes, but of course you're right, it is often a problem, but it doesn't prevent us doing a lot more work in this regard. Are there international organizations that need reform? Well, one of them in my mind when I was in office was the World Health Organization. And I think Ambassador Power gave some examples of the action that had to be taken in the Ebola crisis by individual countries, particularly by the United States, United Kingdom, and France, because the World Health Organization was not mounting a very good response. Now, to be fair, I do think that under Dr. Tedros, it has actually improved, although it's still easy to criticize the response of recent months. So I think that was one that certainly stood out and has now become much more topical.
Thank you.